Great. Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Once again, welcome to you all. And it always brings a smile to my face when I hear the warm chatter among our guests and everyone enjoying one another's company. Thank you again for joining us this afternoon. And now I would like to welcome our webcast viewers and also thank MediaEvents.ca, Canada's online event space, and VVC for live streaming today's event. Once again, my name is Danny Asaf, the immediate past president of the Canadian Club of Toronto. And thank you, on cue. The check is in the mail. There is no doubt. And have the pleasure and the honor of being your host here today, this afternoon. The Canadian Club is proud of its history of bringing you business, political, and social leaders from here and abroad to talk about the things that are important to us. And today's guest is a great example of that. And before I take the opportunity to introduce him and our topic, I do want to ask for your indulgence to describe a couple of our other upcoming events that are in the same spirit. We will host a dynamic healthcare innovation panel that will discuss how research, access, science, and technology are changing our healthcare experience. And that will be held on Wednesday, April 26th. On Monday, May 1st, Canada's new ambassador to China, John McCallum, will be at our podium. And on Monday, May 8th, we welcome Ontario's Minister of Education, the Honourable Mitzi Hunter. To order your tickets or learn more about the club, please visit us at canadianclub.org. And you can also join the conversation via Twitter and Instagram by following us at CDNCLBTO or by using that hashtag. And today I do want to take a moment to express a special thanks for today's event sponsor, the Carpenters District Council of Ontario, represented by Nikki Holland. Without their generous support, we wouldn't be able to put on these lunches. Thank you very much. And I also want to take an opportunity to acknowledge the many young leaders who are with us here today from Ryerson University, Immigration and Settlement Studies, and the University of Toronto, the Monk School of Global Affairs, Ethnic, Immigration, and Pluralism Studies. Welcome, and please stand if you don't mind, and we can recognize your attendance and your participation. Wonderful. Always a pleasure to have young leaders join us here, as the topic today, of course, deals with the future, and the future is theirs. Today's topic, from refugees and immigrants to citizens, is something that has always been critical to our country and to our future, and we take it for granted. And we take for granted what each generation of refugees and immigrants bring not only to our social life, but also to our economy. And if you look around today and you see some of the greatest companies, it's interesting to see who founded them. While there are many great families of establishment we can think of in popular notions of the Rockefellers, the Vanderbilts, the Kennedys, and others, it's interesting to note none of those families started Apple or Facebook or Twitter. And it's interesting, and it'll be fascinating to see who will be the leaders and the entrepreneurs that will create the next generations of great companies. And it's true, we have an advantage here in Canada because we enjoy an international reputation of a safe and welcoming land for immigrants and refugees, most of whom work very hard, ultimately, to become citizens and as citizens. and guaranteeing a safe and welcoming environment that takes work and takes work and is not without its challenges. And this is well known to our new Minister of Immigration, Refugees, and Citizenship. His story is reflective of this journey to success in Canada. He is himself an immigrant from Somalia and has worked hard for equal rights and justice throughout his time here, and today rising to be the minister. He is a member of Parliament for York South Weston riding and immigrated to Canada 24 years ago. And in that relatively short period of time, he studied hard and he worked even harder. He has degrees from York University and went on to study law at Ottawa University and became a lawyer and social activist. In addition to that, he's a co-founder of the Regent Park Community Council. He was instrumental in the community's $500 million revitalization project. Minister Hussen served also as the national president of the Canadian Somali Congress, and he has always been someone known for his results-driven reputation and also as a community hero who did things for the right reasons. And we are proud to welcome him here today. And again, if you have any questions, please write them down, and I'm pleased to offer them to the minister to answer. And Minister Hussen, at this point, it is my pleasure to welcome you and to offer you the Canadian Club podium. The Canadian Club podium is yours.
Thank you for that kind introduction. I want to start by talking about a young man who is on a journey to Canada. He is filled with conflicting emotions. One, he's thinking about the fear that engulfs him as he thinks about this new country and this new land, and wondering whether people there will accept him, what are the norms there and the language and so on. But at the same time, in equal fashion, he's filled with hope and an excitement at the possibilities of restarting his life and having opportunities for himself and his family. Ladies and gentlemen, thanks for coming today in the middle of the day to hear me speak. And a few days ago, we celebrated the 35th anniversary of our Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms. This is a document that has revolutionized Canadian society and has really influenced our jurisprudence and made us into a rights-based society, and enabled us to welcome people from all over the world to create equality and aspire to create equality and create opportunity for all of us. But why are we here? Why are you here today to listen to me, to talk about immigration, to talk to you as the Minister of Immigration? Well, why is immigration important? Everywhere you go in Canada, if you talk to different stakeholders, if you talk to different groups, they'll keep talking about how we have a skills shortage, how we have a worker shortage, how we have demographic challenges in various parts of this great country. And although immigration is not the silver bullet for all of that, it is a key tool to address some, if not all of those concerns. And as we think about that, we have to ask ourselves, what does immigration look like today? In other words, what does the department that I lead today look like? And when you look at that, you realize that a lot of the programming that is in Immigration, Refugees, and Citizenship Canada is actually geared towards making sure that we continue to welcome people who need protection and sanctuary, but also compete in the real global race for talent and skills. And so what we are doing in Immigration, Refugees, and Citizenship Canada is to, for example, maintain and grow our tradition of being a progressive country that welcomes those in need, not shying away from our international obligations to provide protection for those who are fleeing war and persecution. Equally, if not as important, to make sure that we allow for avenues for Canadians to reunite with their family members and loved ones, and also make sure that we have mechanisms in place and we continue to pay attention to the aspects of immigration that allow us to compete, to get the best and the brightest to Canada and facilitate their way here. So in order to do that, this year, in the whole picture, we are set to welcome and land 300,000 permanent residents in Canada. That is a historic high, and it reflects all those three ambitions that I spoke about. 40,000 of those 300,000 will be refugees, government resettled refugees, 25,000. That's double what the previous government used to invite to Canada. 16,000 privately sponsored refugee spots. That is almost quadruple what used to exist prior to 2016. And the remainder is asylum seekers who we can never predict based on global migration patterns. And then 172,000 of that 300,000 are economic immigrants, skilled labor, talent, people who are coming here to scale up their startup company and make sure that we have the environment and the ecosystem to do that. And so I'll mention a few of those programs to show you what we're doing in that regard. Express entry. 80,000 of the 172,000 skilled immigrants will come through the Express Entry program. This is an objective program that awards points based on age, language proficiency in either English or French or both, post-secondary education and work experience. And that program was working really well, and last year we made some reforms to it that have rejigged the system to enable international students to be more advantageously taken care of in the Express Entry program, so that we can capture and retain more international students who come to study in Canada but decide to remain. Why wouldn't we want to hang on to these people? These are already people who are proficient in English and French, or both, and who have a post-secondary education in one of our fine institutions. The other program is something that we've announced as a government. It's a whole-of-government approach, but will be launched in June, the Global Skills Strategy. It came from listening to many of those who are in this room who called for government to help in the facilitation of getting talent here very quickly. And it has three aspects. One is a global talent stream to enable companies to get people here so that they can grow and create even more jobs for Canadians. How does that work? It reduces the onerous and removes the onerous aspects of the labor market impact assessment and replaces it with a labor market benefit plan so that we look at what this new person is bringing in terms of jobs to this company. The second is a dedicated service channel, which already exists in my department, whereby if a company tomorrow calls us up and says, we want to move our headquarters to Canada, we have the mechanisms in place to get them here in under a month and make sure that all their work permits and everything else is processed in record pace. And the final one is something that makes sense, that will make it so much easier for our border officials to deal with this, is short-term exemptions for work permits for people who are coming here to do short-term consultancy, 15 to 30 days a year, or highly skilled research by academics in about maximum 120 days out of the year. Why should we require those people to have work permits? So we'll give them an exemption to get them here, do what they have to do, and then go back to their particular ecosystem. And the other one is the startup visa, where we identify promising startups in conjunction with industry associations and venture capitalists. And they designate those people, and then we give them permanent residency, and we process them to get here quickly so that they can come to Canada, scale up, and create more jobs for all of us and prosperity for each one of us. And finally, the program that I love the most, the Atlantic Immigration Program. It was designed by someone in this room that I'll mention later. This is a program where we sat with the 4 Atlantic premiers, and we told them, you are facing demographic and labor market challenges. Tell us what immigration program you would like to address those challenges. What would it look like? And they literally drafted that program. And they thought we would sort of tinker with it, and we didn't. We just took it and said, okay, we'll do it. And under that program, Atlantic Canada will receive 2,000 extra applications. That is 2,000 applications plus their families to bring in intermediate and high-skilled labor, no LMIA, because part of the problem with Atlantic Canada is not attracting skilled immigrants, but retaining them. 90% of skilled immigrants to Ontario stay, 94% stay in Alberta, but only 60% stay in Atlantic Canada. So what's unique about this program, it's the only program in immigration where the employer is responsible for the settlement plan of the skilled immigrants. So not only is the employer identifying the skilled immigrant that they want to bring, in exchange for dropping the LMIA requirement, we expect them to put together a settlement plan that addresses the needs of that particular skilled immigrant and their family, so that it improves the retention rate. When your kids when your kids are in school and your spouse has started a business in Nova Scotia, it's harder for you to then just move to Toronto, because now you have roots in the community, right? The Atlantic Immigration Pilot is working really well now, and over 250 companies in Atlantic Canada are participating and have been designated under this program through help with the provinces and working with the settlement agencies on the ground that we fund to provide settlement services. But all these things I'm telling you would have been virtually impossible without the historic generosity of Canadians, the ongoing generosity. We've welcomed as a country refugees from Hungary. Our opening of doors to Vietnamese boat people, 60,000 in the 1970s, was literally the reason why we now have a private sponsorship of refugees. It started from the sponsorship of, private sponsorship of Vietnamese boat people. And you also, the national effort, the truly national effort that we had with respect to Syrian refugees, where school children in 2016 were putting lunch money and pooling it together to sponsor or help a Syrian refugee family, where seniors in a senior home were pooling their resources together to sponsor a Syrian family, where people were, you know, my predecessor, John McCallum, used to go around the world and in Canada, and he would say he's the only immigration minister in the world who can't get refugees fast enough to meet the demand and the generosity of Canadians. I mean, we sort of take these things for granted, but it speaks a lot about Canada. And the young man that I spoke earlier about, on his second day in Canada, he was trying to mail a letter to his mother to tell her that he arrived in Canada in the middle of a crazy storm, a snowstorm in Toronto. And as he's trying to figure out this red box from Canada Post and wrestling with it and trying to see where the opening is for the mail, it's not that clear to a new immigrant. A woman walking, navigating this, you know, snowy sidewalk with her baby in a stroller stops, leaves the baby, takes a few seconds to help this young man put that valuable letter in the mailbox. The very next day, he tries to go to a laundromat, try to wash his clothes, and someone tells him, oh, you need a loonie. And he thinks, what's a loonie? Is it a crazy person? And doesn't realize a loonie is actually a piece of currency. And another woman who was doing her laundry also helps him figure the intricacies of loonies and toonies in Canada. And quickly enough, you see that generosity. And you see it all around us. People, actually at my head table, Jim Esteele, who donated $1.5 million of his own money to sponsor 50 Syrian refugee families to his community. Thank you. And what's amazing about it is he could have put the money to a refugee agency or a community service organization and walked away and said, I've done my part. But he didn't do that. He did it in a very Canadian way. He got interfaith and community groups from all backgrounds and rolled up his sleeves and actually worked with them and made sure that his money had the biggest impact. And today, after speaking to you, I find out that it's not 50 families, it's now up to 58. So thank you very much for that. So the generosity of Canadians has always been there. But having spoken about those great programs that are working really well for us, and having recognized the generosity of Canadians, does that mean that we are there where we want to be in Immigration, Refugees, and Citizenship Canada? Absolutely not. We're not even close. Why do I say that? because we still have backlogs. In fact, the young man I spoke about, he works through the system, uses community resources and the settlement agencies to finish high school and work hard. But upon finishing high school, he can't go to university. He can't access student loans. Why? Because he's not yet a permanent resident. And he has to wait in immigration limbo for 6 years because of backlogs, because of slow processing times. And so he can't contribute and integrate properly into Canadian society, not because of anything that he's doing, but he's waiting for immigration, Citizenship and Immigration Canada to process his permanent residency. And that legacy refugee is also there today. There are many legacy refugees who are also waiting for 5 to 6 years now. There are caregivers who are waiting for their permanent residency to be resolved. And then there's private sponsored refugees who are in queue, almost 47,000 of them, who are waiting to connect with their sponsoring family. What have we done to address those backlogs? Well, one of the first things that we did when we formed government was we tackled the backlog in spousal sponsorships, because that was a clear irritant in the community. And we processed 20,000 backlogged spousal cases, and it used to take 26 months up to 3 years or more to reunite spouses. We now have a new standard in the vast majority of cases of 12 months or less, and most of those cases are actually much less than that. If you wanted to renew your PR card, it used to take 10 to 18 months. We're now talking about 54 days. And we're not satisfied with that, we're going for 14 days. If you look at temporary resident visas, another irritant, the industry standard is now, in our department, is now 14 days. Does that mean all the visa offices are there? Absolutely not. But I've been visiting a few of them already, and I continue to engage to make sure that we bring that down. I don't want an international student to go to the UK because his visa took too long. I don't want someone to defer or deflect or go somewhere else with their investment because they didn't have fast processing times. One of the key things that blew my mind when I took over this role, and I think it will for you, is just one stream of immigration, just one that we sponsor, that we process, is international students. Would you believe me if I told you that the amount of money that international students put into our economy is more than what we get from the exporting of softwood lumber, from the exporting of wheat, from our financial services, and an equal amount of money to our exports of automotive parts. Yet, Australia, which is not in our hemisphere, attracts more Mexican international students than us. We can't accept that. We can do and will do more. Last year, we brought in and approved 367,000 international student visas. That's a jump of 22% over the previous year. So we are doing better, but we can do much more. There's so much room for improvement, and part of it is processing times. Part of it is client service. I went to Germany and the UK and Switzerland, and at each stop, everyone was raving about our settlement and integration infrastructure, how we do settlement so well. And I was happy about that, but I thought we could still do better. For example, in Germany, I learned how the Germans were taking young refugees, putting them in apprenticeships, in skilled trades where the Germans were really good at, and teaching them, for example, how to manufacture high-speed trains while teaching them the language at the same time, not consecutively like we do. They were doing it concurrently. So is that an idea that we can learn from? How do the Swedes do integration better than us, especially for young people? And those are the kinds of lessons that I want to bring back to Canada on our settlement plan. Settlement eats up 40% of IRCC budget. So we have to ask ourselves, can we do better? And the only way we can do that is to ask ourselves, are we having the maximum impact on that newcomer to enable him or her to restart their lives and succeed in Canada so that they can contribute to our common prosperity? And to do that, we have to measure data. Make sure that all the settlement agencies from the East Coast to the West Coast, to the Northern Coast, have the same vision and collect data in the same way so that we can look at outcomes and not just outputs. So I also want to acknowledge the fact that when immigrants succeed, we all succeed. And historically, for the most part, when immigrants succeed in Canada, they have an overwhelming desire and commitment to this country, and they give back. And a number of them I mean, if I were to list them, this lunch would turn into a dinner. But I'll acknowledge a few of them. Hassan Yusuf, who's here, came from Guyana. And he spent, speaking about public service, he spent almost 40 years in Canada in public service, and he now heads the Canadian Labour Congress. Dolores Lawrence, a strong woman from Jamaica who comes to Canada with virtually nothing, uses $5,000 from her Canada savings bonds to start a healthcare company that provides employment opportunities for 500 healthcare professionals and healthcare services to thousands of clients. Mohamed Faki, a gentleman from Lebanon who came here in his 20s with nothing but hard work and an entrepreneurial spirit, starts a restaurant business by taking over a failing restaurant location, turns it into a fine Canadian company called Paramount Fine Foods, has now over 50 locations in Canada, and is spreading globally in various different countries and cities. And Wes Hall, young man from Jamaica who comes, gets his start as a mailroom clerk, and now has created so much wealth and prosperity in Bay Street for many other people. That same young man that I spoke to you earlier has finished university and is now giving back to his community by volunteering and by tutoring young children in at-risk neighborhoods. So as I talk about immigration and I talk about the things that we're doing right, as I talk about the generosity of Canadians, I want to come back to some of the programming that I spoke about earlier, Express Entry, the startup visa. We also recently announced in this year's budget a targeted employment strategy for newcomers, because we want newcomers to hit the ground running so that they can use $27.5 million. Some of that money will go to assist them to expand pre-arrival services so that skilled immigrants can start the licensing and credential recognition process abroad before they even get here so that they can hit the ground running. When they get here, a lot of them don't practice in their fields, and so they don't earn their potential, and we lose out on their skills. Why? Because they can't pay for their exams. They can't pay the application fees. They can't support their family. So we're giving them loans in order to be able for them to pay for those exams and those application fees. And I'm already meeting dentists and electricians and nurses who have already become professionals in Canada as a result of those loans. And the third aspect of that employment strategy for newcomers is creation of paid internships so that they can get that valued Canadian work experience, connecting them with mentors, job matching, and so on. Pilot programs to see what works. And we're already seeing a lot of success. So a lot of the programs like Express Entry, Global Skills Strategy, the Startup Visa, the Atlantic Immigration Pilot, all those did not come from the thin air. In fact, it didn't come from our department. It didn't come from government. It came from the business sector. It came from Canadians. It came from many people in this room. So, and that's why it's important to continue to engage. I'm proud to be part of a government that admits from the get-go that we don't have all the answers, that we have to engage with Canadians to make sure that we get the feedback from everyone on the ground. So throughout this story, throughout this talk, I was telling you about the young man who came to Canada on a perilous journey with conflicting emotions, a lot of fear of this distant and unknown land, but a lot of hope for this young person's future, for themselves and their families, and hope for a new beginning, which a lot of new immigrants have, newcomers. And that young man then turns around and benefits greatly, immensely, almost from day one, from the generosity of Canadians, from the generosity of our community services. And sees that as something that is an example to him and gives back in spades after he's settled and integrated into Canada. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Ahmed Hussen, and I'm that young man, and I took that long journey to get to this place where now, historically, I'm leading the very department that I was once a client of so many years ago. And I can tell you, thank you. But I'm sorry to break it to you, my story is not unique. There's millions of newcomers that have this similar story. And when people credit me abroad and say, wow, you did all this, I say, no. The credit goes to Canada because it's only in a country like Canada is my story and other stories possible. So as I go back to Express Entry and Global Skills and all the money-making business initiatives, I want to tell you that we need you in this room to keep challenging us, to keep pushing those innovative ideas that work for you. What do you need to grow your business, to grow the economy, to create jobs for all of us? I have a great team here. One of them is Bernie Durable. Bernie, could you stand up, please? Bernie is the gentleman who single-handedly designed the Atlantic Immigration Program. I have Tia Tariq, Zubair, and Christine Witten, who are also here. Could you please stand? Please reach out to these individuals. I want you to ask them questions, give them feedback. I commit to you that I'll listen to those ideas. We'll continue to remain innovative and creative, but we can't do that without your input. You're the ones who go through the challenges of getting someone here. The need for skilled immigrants, the need for that consultant who can turn your company around and grow your business. You're the ones who know how and when and exactly in what manner we should do that and what kind of immigration programs we should have in place to do that. So we need your response. We need to do this together. I commit to you that as a department, I will continue to be hungry for better processing times, for better client service, for a better experience. I want you to experience the immigration department in a pleasant manner. The forms, the 1-800 number, everything should be a pleasant experience and something that facilitates the creation of talent and investment and skills into Canada. So as we do that, we have to remember that it's only through that partnership of industry, business, Canadians, settlement agencies, ordinary Canadians, and the federal government that we can continue to have and enjoy having an immigration system that will continue to be a key ingredient in our economic success, economic growth, but also our common prosperity, your prosperity and mine. Thank you very much.
Fantastic job.
So do I stay for questions?
Yeah, let's stay. Can you stay for some
Okay, sure. Go ahead. Go ahead. Okay.
See, I knew they would shut the mic off eventually on me here. Hello, can you hear? Fantastic. Minister, thank you for your remarks and your leadership. And they are notable because of not only your personal experience, but the integration of your approach from the vision you have of Canada and its role in the world, and also to the details of how to implement our program efficiently, and even starting from those very levels at the trenches where you can make that experience more efficient and better outcomes. It's truly extraordinary to hear somebody with that approach. So thank you for staying with us to take a few questions, and I have many questions. You've drawn a great room, and including the Ontario Minister of Immigration and Citizenship, right. Minister Albanese. Thank you very much for joining us. And I want to start off with a very interesting question, which is at the top of my mind as you talked about your initial days and going around the world, and that is, how do you reconcile Canada's continued approach to immigration and prosperity with some of the more protectionist and what they called populist sentiments in other places in the world of late?
Sure. I can answer that.
You have? Oh, you have.
Oh, I have
still
the mic.
on.
Yeah.
They don't turn your mic off. Just
you.
mine.
Okay. So I respond to that. I've had that question from the first day that I got this role. Why are you guys different? And I always start by saying that we are not going to determine the immigration policies of other countries, but I'll tell you what we're doing. And I start off by saying we in Canada are open to people and we're open to ideas. That's the choice that we've made. The choice today is close off your mind and close off your doors, or be open to ideas and be open to talent and people. And I always say around the world that we've made a choice, and that choice is we will be open to ideas and be open to talent and people. And we'll continue to welcome individuals both seeking a better life and helping us with their talents, but also those who are seeking protection. Because I find that in both those circumstances, because of our settlement and integration policies, which are not perfect, but are really good, they tend to both be leaders down the road. And so I respond by talking about our choice. But let me tell you something else. The global migration patterns that I'm witnessing right now are such that if you shut your doors and you play that card, you may win an election or two, but you can't, it's not a long-term solution. Eventually, you'll have to deal with migration patterns, either for work or for protection. And if you look at what the UN is doing now with the Global Compact on refugees, but a separate compact on migration, actually something that Canada can be proud of. The Global Compact on migration is headed by the Honourable Louise Arbour. Yes. I met her yesterday in New York, and she's doing amazing work to try to get countries to come together and have a common understanding on, for example, let's start low. Let's say, okay, migrant kids and refugee kids should just be treated the same and should have access, and then build from there. How do we re-examine migration and remove the pejorative nature of migrants, right? So the way that, the pejorative way it's used, right? Yes. So Statistics Canada, for example, has done a study that has shown that migrants, through legal pathways and even irregular migrants, contribute more in taxes and other contributions, socially and economically, than they get in benefits every time. OECD has done similar studies as well. And the other thing is, the more legal pathways you create for people to come and work for short periods of time, you won't have a huge problem with irregular migration. And in fact, one of the myths is that people want to come and never want to go back. That's not true. If people know that they can come for short periods of time, I'm talking about migration, yes, not refugees. Yes. If they know that they can come, make some money, and go back, they would. That's where their family is. Yeah. That's where their loved ones are. And our farm program, for example, Jamaica is celebrating 40 years of taking part in that program. It's successful. People come, they've been coming here for years, and they go back. So the more legal pathways you create, the more prosperity you create for those source countries, but you also fill labor gaps that you have. If you don't create those legal pathways and raise the walls, you'll expose more and more people to criminal syndicates who traffic in people, the very people that we don't want to empower.
No, I think your point is powerful. That in addition, the narrative is very important. Redefining that. We have time for one more question, and it's from Stephen Crine, the president of the Canadian Employee Relocation Council. He had a little more specific it's a question into the specifics, Minister, which is, do you anticipate that the new global skills strategy will be expanded beyond high-growth firms to all firms that are unable to recruit key talent in the Canadian market?
So I'll answer that question in two ways. One is the global skills strategy came about as a result of consultations with business, but also with provinces and municipalities. So as we have that conversation, if provinces want either an expansion of that program or a similar program dealing with those kinds of issues, I'm happy to listen. Mm-hmm. The second thing, though, that I want to point out is through the Atlantic Immigration Program, I am so eager to have that program succeed, because not only does it address the particular labor market and demographic challenges of Atlantic Canada, it also gives us a blueprint to apply to other parts of the country. So the reason why I tie it to this question is because the question's about intermediate skills, right? Not just high skills.
Right.
And Atlantic Immigration Program is about both intermediate skills and high skills. And if it works, and preliminary indications show that it's working really well, nothing stops us from replicating that program in Manitoba, for example, and having intermediate skilled immigrants come through a similar pilot and waive the LMIA.
That's great. Sounds like we're well on our way to finding out whether that'll work or not for the rest of the country.
Yes.
Once again, Minister, thank you very much.
Thank
you very much for coming and joining us this afternoon. A
Thank
real
you.
pleasure.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. I'd like to ask Bilal Khan to come up and say a few words of thanks.
Thanks. Thank you.
First of all, I have to say I'm embarrassed by taking out my notes. I'm just thanking the minister, and I have notes here. And Minister, thank you for sharing the story. When you started talking about the young boy, immediately I was like, please let that boy be the minister. And then when you said it, I was like, yes, that's him. That's great. Minister Hussen, on behalf of the Canadian Club of Toronto, we'd like to thank you for your hard work and your dedication to protecting the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. The current climate globally reinforces just how fragile those rights are and how much of an important role we all play in protecting those particular rights. We cannot take what we have here for granted, and that's very clear. Generations before us have created this and have built it, and it's on us now to protect it. We applaud your efforts not only to open our borders to refugees and immigrants, but to ensure that they have the support and resources that they need to succeed and prosper in this great country, be it access to housing, healthcare, employment, or training. The beauty of all of this, and I think we can all appreciate this, is that you, Minister, are leading by example. Your own immigrant story is an inspiration to all of us and a testament to the important contributions immigrants make to our society and the boundless opportunities that this country offers to all of us. Thank you for sharing your story. Minister Hussen, please accept our best wishes as you continue the important work of ensuring that refugees, immigrants, and citizens experience the true meaning and the incredible privilege of being a Canadian. Before we conclude, let me just extend another round of thanks to today's sponsors, Carpenters District Council of Ontario. Nikki, thank you very much. We'd also like to thank MediaEvents.ca, Canada's online event space, and VVC for live streaming today's events. To learn more about the Canadian Club and the incredible work this group does, please visit us at thecanadianclub.org. Thank you all for joining us today. We look forward to seeing you all soon. Thank you.